It's been 26 years since the release of the original Link's Awakening. It was a wildly ambitious game for its time, squeezing down the principles of a 16-bit Zelda onto an 8-bit device. And while it was met with some limitations that we'll address in an upcoming Under the Super Scope, there's a reason why many regard it as their favourite game in the series. Link's Awakening is weird and special, and now Nintendo and Grezzo are aiming to recapture that feeling on Switch. Grezzo were previously responsible for remastering Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on 3DS. But in the case of both, they were working from the original source code. Link's Awakening though has of course been redone from scratch. Now today we can only talk up until Animal Village, but rest assured that's more than enough time to witness 12 dramatic changes the remake has over the original. So, let's jump in. Number 1. Item Management. One of the key areas where the original game falters is item management. The Game Boy only has 2 buttons, and so you spend a lot of time jumping in and out of the inventory screen. After all, you're not just shifting between normal items, but also your sword and shield. And sometimes the game will even combine usage of items like the Pegasus boots and Rock's Feather. So when this happens, you're pretty much defenseless and have to get your sword back on immediately after. And the thing with Link's Awakening is, unlike other Zeldas, you're pretty much using every single item up until the end of the game. Pretty much every single dungeon needs Rock's Feather and the Power Bracelet. In fact, to give you a preview of the upcoming Under the Super Scope, I counted how many times I open up the menu in each dungeon, and let's just say it gets dramatically higher with each consecutive one. While it may look like the Switch has the same limitations in place, it actually dedicates 4 buttons to specific items. B is your sword, R is your shield, L is the Pegasus boots, and the A button is your Power Bracelet. That is a significant portion of your overall getup, so while you still do occasionally have to swap items out, it's nowhere near as severe, and doesn't bring the pacing down to a halt like the original does. Number 2. No more of this. Anyone who played the original will remember this. If you ever accidentally touched a pot or a boulder before obtaining the Power Bracelet, you'll get this very slow box of dialogue informing you the object is just too heavy. But that's just for the Power Bracelet, right? No big deal, that's just in the second dungeon. Oh, this object does it too. Now it wants the Pegasus boots. Except, unlike the boulders, which do stop the message once you get the Power Bracelet, this thing never stops. Right up until the end of the game, it still tells you need the Pegasus boots. I think I know that by now. Now, wanna see something magical? This save file's from the beginning of the game. Now let's touch this boulder. So peaceful. But if I do attempt to pick up the boulder using the A button, I still get that ever so familiar message. But at least it's way quicker. In fact, that goes for all text boxes. Not only does more text fit into a single box, but you can get through them so much faster. Number 3. No screen transitions. I wasn't quite sure how to feel about this one at first, as the entire world was designed with the Game Boy's limitations in mind. However, the lack of transitions means not only can you travel the world faster, but it also feels more connected than ever. You can see distant areas and really get a feel for where everything is. I had a much easier time navigating Koholint on Switch than I ever did on Game Boy, though it's certainly worth noting that the seamlessness comes at a cost. Whenever the game loads in a new area, there's a noticeable drop from 60 FPS to 30. It does start to feel less jarring over time, but it's something I never stop noticing. At least the majority of the time, the action is at 60 FPS. It's definitely going to affect some more than others, but I just couldn't stop seeing it. Number 4. Bottles and more heart pieces. As the trailers have shown, the Link's Awakening remake allows you to completely fill your hearts with up to 20 of them, while the original only had 14. The remake also introduces empty bottles, which, while a standard for the series, were absent from the original game. The post-game on Game Boy was pretty minimal, so this gives you a lot more to do outside of the main quest. And also... Number 5. Minigames have been beefed up. While minigames were a nice distraction, they didn't exactly offer much. On Game Boy, the crane game had a Yoshi doll and, well, that's about it. Whereas the Switch still has a Yoshi doll and also a heart piece. And also a seashell. And another heart piece. And is that a boo? Not only is the crane game substantially redesigned over the original with actual claw physics, but the rewards have been amplified tenfold. You can get figurines of a bunch of Mario enemies and decorate them around Mabe Village. Likewise with fishing. The rewards aren't quite as extensive, but the fishing itself is a lot more in depth. There's different lures to unlock, more than just one heart piece, and of course an empty bottle is hiding in here too. So while these minigames were very much one and done in the original, there's actually some meaningful fun to be had in the remake. Number 6. Hero Mode. Link's Awakening on the Game Boy isn't a very challenging game, and while the remake doesn't take too many strides to up the ante, it does have hero mode. You might have noticed this icon here over the course of the video. That's to remind you you're a true gamer. Hero mode works much like Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, where nothing in the world drops hearts. Nothing from enemies, nothing from grass. Heck, even mini-bosses don't drop fairies like they do normally. And so the only ways you can heal are to either find a cave full of fairies, visit a great fairy, pick up a heart container, or visit Crazy Tracy who will give you a potion. Bottling up fairies does make it somewhat easier, but this is a pretty hardcore mode, especially as enemies deal double damage. Number 7. Some bosses have seen redesigns. Some bosses in Link's Awakening were complete pushovers. We unfortunately can't show you many of them just yet, but there have been some smart tweaks. Like on Game Boy, it's hard to tell if you're dealing damage to the genie's bottle, but on Switch you can slowly see it breaking apart. Or how the Hinox mini-boss is far more aggressive on Switch and charges at you far more often rather than just lazily throwing bombs from a distance. Rest assured, some bosses pose far more of a threat. Number 8. Puzzles no longer reset in dungeons. Here's an early example of something that's always annoyed me in the Game Boy version. In this room, there's a locked door that you don't have a key for, and a door that opens when lighting up these torches. Cool. So we light the torches, make our way through this door, get the key, go back, and boom. Door locks behind us. So when we need to head back, you have to light these torches again and use 2 more units of magic powder. This thankfully doesn't happen on Switch, and the same's true for practically all puzzles. If there's a room full of enemies you have to defeat, on Game Boy you would have to do it every single time, whereas on Switch it's thankfully just the once. It just makes dungeon navigation a bit more free-flowing and less frustrating. Number 9. More warp points. Warping in Link's Awakening was always a bit odd. There are core segments with no ease of access. Thankfully, the remake introduces a couple more. There's one right outside Danpei's house in the lead up to Tao Tao Heights, and also one near the beach. In fact, warping as a whole is so much more streamlined. On Game Boy, you'd have to do this. Whereas on Switch, you can select where you're going, which seems obvious in hindsight. While Koholint is pretty small compared to other Zelda worlds, they fill almost every screen with something meaningful. But by the nature of that, you'll be seeing the same areas a lot. So the superior warping is such a welcome feature. Number 10. AutoSaving. Have you realised how few games these days rely solely on manual saving? Heck, it seems even Pokemon's adapted an autosave. Link's Awakening finds a nice balance. There's basically 4 save files, your 3 standard manual ones, and then a 4th autosave one. It autosaves whenever you do something meaningful like picking up a key or unlocking a door, or just anything that impacts progress. And in an era where some games don't even have manual saving, this is a pretty intelligent addition. In fact, it's one of very few Zelda games to even include it. The list so far is Breath of the Wild, Cadence of Hyrule, and Triforce Heroes. Kind of a small club. Number 11. Danpei. I feel this element's been touted as the selling point of this remake, and while it's a decent distraction, it's the improvements made to the core game that I think should really be the focus. That said, the chamber dungeons give us a glimpse of what a Zelda maker might be like. So this area basically replaces the photo store from the original and allows you to mix dungeon rooms together. It's a novel idea and has more of a gameplay purpose and longevity than the photo store ever did, but as for how much it really offers remains to be seen. But first things first, this is not like Mario Maker. You're not necessarily challenging others with these rooms, and in fact you can't even share them online. In the most Nintendo way possible, the only way to share your layouts is by saving them on an amiibo. So really, you're not making these for other people, but rather just yourself. Danpei will give you some limitations and criteria to meet, and by doing so you get some rewards, like seashells, heart pieces, and even a bottle. Although of course the designs themselves aren't yours. Each room comes from a dungeon in the game. I can't say it's left all that much of an impression on me yet, but there's at least more you can do than the original. And finally, number 12, the visuals and music. You've been watching gameplay and listening to music over the course of this entire video, but seriously, this might be one of the best looking games I've ever seen. It's a rather literal conversion of the Game Boy art style, with flowers being in the exact same place, and trees looking the same, and even Link's model being based on in-game art. But the level of detail is just astonishing, like houses feel actually lived in now, with full furnishings and pictures in every single one. And the fixed camera allows them to fully optimize every scene in a way that made my heart melt. Look at the materials, look at the fire, look at the water. This is far and away the best looking game on Switch. And then there's the music. The original game had several of Zelda's best compositions, and they've been given so much care in the remake. Sometimes they go for a full orchestral score, Other times they blend in Game Boy samples, and in the case of Animal Village, they compose the entire song with meows and woofs. They know how to sell a game to me. Everything about the presentation is simply stunning. Even the menus are sleeker than any other game in the series. I do wish they maintained 60 FPS the entire time, but there's no taking away how beautiful this art style is and how impressive the tech behind it is. We've still got some time until we provide our full review, but this is shaping up to be one heck of a remake that fixes a lot of my problems with the original game. So I guess the question is now, does Link's Awakening offer enough in 2019? We'll have to wait and see on that one. Heck, you can even knock apples off trees and eat them to restore health now. Doesn't happen very often, but it's a very important change. I mean, look how cute it is. Anyway, be sure to subscribe to GameXplain and also ring that bell for a lot more on Link's Awakening and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye!